Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel has already been torn to shreds by the internet, and to be quite frank, I agree with most of the criticism. Some storylines go nowhere, some are half-baked. Charlie. And yet, in spite of everything, this was one of my favorite seasons of television. Hazbin's biggest strength has never been fulfilling its potential. It's always been the sheer amount of it. Most shows' appeal is restricted to their story. Everything surrounding it only serves to enhance it. Hazbin, on the other hand, its character design, music, animation, universe, and so much more not only enhances the story, no, all these aspects tell a story of their own and are filled with so much passion, it would make Valentino blush. It's this passion that shines through the cracks. Even when Season 2 made a poor decision or something simply didn't suit my taste, I enjoyed it nonetheless because Hazbin is so enthusiastically, so unapologetically itself. Its love for what it's doing is infectious. Except in episode 3. This is especially true for the V's, who are the highlight of every episode they showed up in. I was already a big fan of their scenes in Season 1, but let's be honest, it was a questionable decision to include them as the show was already struggling under short runtime. The first season paid this price, the second cashed out. Us going into Season 2 already familiar with the V's allows it to skip a lengthy introduction as well as setting up all of the interpersonal ties and instead spend this time to form our emotional response to them. There is a giant difference between us knowing something is true and us feeling that it's true. If I say, "This is Bleeple Blob the Destroyer, he will wipe out the entire Helliverse unless you like and subscribe," you would know he's dangerous, but would you really be afraid of Bleeple Blob? Valentino already crossed this threshold. He felt dangerous, yet Vox mainly came across like a show-off and Velvet like a brat. What finally pushed them over the edge is Trust Us, the V-side of Hazbin Guarantee, showing us a whole montage of them discovering, using up and throwing away one of their stars, something we already assumed they did anyway. The only new info it conveys is Vox being bad at sharing the spotlight, which isn't even part of the song's premise and gets reiterated every chance they get anyway. Trust Us is entirely redundant from a factual point of view, but what it does perfectly is showcase how the V's act. Every single one of them, even the useless one, feels like they have their own unique purpose and personality, but more importantly, it portrays how casually they do this. They not only abuse and discard their stars, they do it without batting an eye. This montage is the perfect way to make us feel how opportunistic and sadistic they are, yet without their prior Season 1 appearances, Hazbin wouldn't have had the time to include this, especially as the V's can't even show up in the next episode. Lute, on the other hand, does. Her song Gravity is a bombastic hymn of love and revenge, confirming that she really is in love with Adam, and that's it. Once again, we have a song by a Season 1 character that is able to fully focus on conveying emotions, as her prior appearances already gave us all the necessary information. And what a song it is! Gravity is this season's fan favorite song for a reason. You really believe Lute doesn't care for what stands in her way. She will get her revenge, and she really did it when Abel called her a bitch and she walked back with her tail between her legs. You know you could have just saved Gravity for a season she's actually relevant in, right? Wait, where was I going with this? Hazbin used the opportunity of their villains being pre-established to its fullest potential. Well done. And I just love how much screen time the V's get. Vox in particular isn't simply an antagonist, he's a full-blown deuteragonist, a secondary main character. Vox is fun and energetic, terrifying yet a dorky little show-off, and his dynamic with the other V's is incredibly entertaining, yet most importantly, he got a bunch of fun things to do. Something I cannot say about Charlie, or anyone else in the hotel's side of the story for that matter. What does Charlie do this season? she fails at everything she does. Every time she tries something prior to the finale, she doesn't achieve it. This should lead to the V's feeling mighty and unstoppable while making her come across as powerless, but it doesn't. For two reasons. Number one, Charlie doesn't fail because she's powerless and the V's are mighty and unstoppable. Most of the time, Charlie fails because she made dumb decisions. As a result, her failures aren't tragic, they don't make me feel for her, they are annoying. Yes, the reason she makes these decisions is her tunnel visioning on her goals and being naive, but something being in character, to which I'd add episode 3 takes this flaw so far that it isn't anymore, doesn't mean it's fun to watch. And while this is already a problem, reason 2 turns these moments from annoying to infuriating. They are written really badly.
Sinners deserve the extermination because they're bad people. But I would never actually say that.
Whoops.
Tell the big roach about how much you like the hotel.
I wonder if the unpredictable chaotic character is gonna do something chaotic and unpredictable.
There's an endless stream of passion built in hundreds of...
Gasp! And do I even have to talk about episode 3? Charlie gets told not to invite a reporter and straight up ignores her girlfriend saying it. Her actions aren't just self-destructive, they are actively destructive as well as highly triggering for Angel, and her being able to stop pretty much whenever she wants, yet choosing not to, makes her incredibly unlikable. But hey, this was vivziepop's intention and episode 6 addressed this. Thank you, surprisingly common Reddit and YouTube comment. Honest question though. So what? Episode 3 still stretches Charlie's character flaws to their breaking points, it still mistakes her naivety for stupidity, the writing is still insanely forced, and most importantly, it isn't a fun episode to watch. It's definitely easier to focus on the jokes and songs now that we know Charlie gets her comeuppance later on, but I could say the same about Happy Campers. A problem being addressed or even fixed doesn't undo it. If I repair my chair, it won't change the fact that I fell on my ass. I don't mean to imply that Charlie failing at something is necessarily bad. The scene of her not being able to convince Camilla to stop building Vox's weapon is great, but even if all of her failures were written this well, it wouldn't change the fundamental problem. Seeing a whole episode dedicated to her failing is tragic. Seeing it happen twice is sad. Make me watch it 3 times and I'm wasting my time with filler. Which isn't even counting all of those smaller examples like her not being able to make guests stay at the hotel or being part of Heaven's failed apology. I can't even look at it as Charlie starts the season with the massive win of finding out redemption really is possible, but her not being able to prove this slowly causes her to act more and more desperately until she hits rock bottom. Because Charlie starts at rock bottom. Her very first try at convincing everyone almost leads to Husk and Angel dying. Her second try is a botched public interview, and the third one is losing an argument. This is a big part of why I got a shocking amount of comments complaining about Charlie not being the main character anymore. Everything she does feels like an afterthought. She has a repetitive, de-escalating story with very little effect on the V's plan, which is simply more interesting. And it's not like I dislike Charlie. Loved her in episode 1, hated her in episode 3, liked her in episode 4, loved her in every episode after that. Charlie isn't a bad character, she simply does the least interesting stuff. Which is made even worse by Alistair switching from low-key existing with a grand total of 4 lines while in Charlie's vicinity to being a much more interesting character once he leaves the hotel and influences Vox, making his storyline even more of an attention hog. So Vox's, Charlie's and Alistair's, that's 3 storylines. Lute has half of one, Sherry has one, Abel kinda does, Angel kinda does, Husk kinda does, so does Baxter, Veggie, Sarah, Pinches. Too much, too many. There's a ton of miniature storylines and most of them consist of setup, followed by immediate payoff. Abel struggles with low self-esteem. Until he doesn't anymore, Lute is filled with rage and nothing can stop her from getting her revenge. Until something does. Plenty of storylines just suddenly end. It's easy to react to this with the standard, oh, Hazbin just needs longer seasons, it needs more episodes, but A, Hell of a Boss was in full control over how many episodes its last season had, and that show's pacing is far worse right now. And B, the story runner and writers know how many episodes they have. If they try to cram in more story than they can tell, the problem isn't time, it's time management. I like Abel. Funny, enjoyable character. What does he add? What would we lose by just cutting him out of the story? I like Baxter. Funny, enjoyable character. What would we lose by just cutting him out of the story? I'm glad Season 2 introduced just a handful of characters, but adding a handful while refusing to phase out old ones is still a problem. And as long as Hazbin stays mortally afraid of mortality, this problem will remain. Season 1 killed 2 characters, Adam and Penches. Adam is still kinda in the series, and Penches has an even bigger role now. In Season 2, Emily gets close to dying but is fine, and the same goes for Vox. And Angel, and Husk again, and Nifty. Hazbin is refusing to kill off its characters, and injuries are a non-issue as sinners simply regenerate, and angels get shiny prosthetics. If this goes on, it won't feel like characters have plot armor. In all likelihood, Vox's plot is over. It will feel like danger as a whole is non-existent. Looking back, Season 1 constantly told us how scary Alistair is, how afraid we should be of him and his powers, but at the end of the day, we only ever got to see him in 2 real fights. One against some random goons, one he lost. All bark, no bite, but he isn't the problem. Alistair's merely a microcosm of Hazbin as a whole. Hazbin told us Lute will be a force to be reckoned with. She was wrecked by getting told off. The reveal of Angel being an unknowing spy was amazing, yet entirely pointless. And the climax of this season wasn't the giant fight between the V's and heaven we were promised. The V's never got to heaven. They just pointed a cannon at it. This show excels at big, flashy moments and giant promises of what's to come, but if you promise the world, all you can do is underdeliver. And while these big, flashy moments are incredibly fun to watch and create a lot of hype, when you think about Hazbin, what comes to your mind? Is it fight scenes? Is it danger? At least for me, it's the heart behind it all, which is why my biggest wish for next season isn't the conflict being bigger, it's not it having a more interesting payoff, it's Charlie having a real connection to it. And as next season's color scheme is gonna be green and purple, I might just get what I wish for, which means I need a new wish, and that's for you to like and subscribe. And to get some feedback for this, please.